Hey Gary, how you doing, man?
Good, Sib. How are you, man? I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, so we missed was it 1 week that we missed or did we miss 2 weeks?
Yeah, we missed a couple of weeks. Yeah, since you
Yeah.
got under the weather. So how you feel now?
Well, I tell you what, I feel much better than I did before. I felt like I was at death's door before, but I'm feeling a lot better now. Yeah, I've never been sick like this before. So, welcome to middle age, I guess.
Yeah, that's really sad, man.
Yeah, it's that. Hold on a second, I'm gonna put this on do not disturb mode. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So, but while I was out of it, I mean, like I was really out of it for like a week, and then like the second week, I've just been kind of like, recuperating. But while I was out of it, I guess NAR reached a settlement.
Yeah, that's really big. Everybody's been talking about it. Everybody got their own opinions, right? We really don't know. I guess it's just a proposal settlement. It's not even settled yet, right?
No, it's not. But I mean, what I've read says that it's going to get approved, supposedly, right? Like it'd be a shocker if it wasn't approved. But this whole thing's been shocking. So no, nothing is said and done yet. But I have not talked to you about it. So what have you been hearing about it? What have you been? What's around your water cooler? What are your agents that you've run into have to say about it?
Well, I mean, everybody is just really down on it. They think their business is over, but I
They
don't.
think business is
Yeah,
over.
I don't think that way. I think we probably gonna have to charge less, make less money now, but we'll still continue to do our business.
Really? Why do you think we'll make less money now?
Well, when the seller have a choice to pay commission or not, then most seller would say no, right?
Well, but the funny thing is, the seller has always had a choice to pay a commission or not.
Well, it's different now. You're not allowed to offer the buyer commission in the MLS. So
No.
the listing agreement will be written differently now.
Presumably, the listing agreement will be written differently now, although I think it'll just be written differently around specifically MLS coverage, I would guess. But the thing is, I mean, to my mind, is I'm not sure why anything is really going to change that much because the seller never had to offer compensation other than $1. They had to offer $1 for their home to be listed in the multiple listing service. But I mean,
Well,
in my career, I
that's
mean,
yeah,
I've
that seems to
seen a
be
$1 listing. How many times have you seen a $1 listing?
no, there's no $1 listing. What I'm saying is, that seems to be the issue. That's what they going after. That the seller was forced to offer even $1.
$1. This whole thing is
Yeah,
about $1. But my
yeah,
point is that this whole time, for the last 40 years, that's been the rule. You had to offer $1, and now you can offer no dollars. Right. So I don't
yep.
understand why, if the only difference is from $1 to $0, that really anything is going to change. And so the one thing that is changing is that the well, there's two things really that are changing really, and they kind of go hand in hand, right? So the first one is you will no longer be able to advertise the buyer's agent commission on the multiple listing service, either in the multiple listing service field or I'm sure in the private remarks or whatever, right? But you can put it anywhere else, just not on the multiple listing service, which is interesting. So that's one thing that is changing. And the other thing that is changing is that now buyers agents will need to have a buyer broker representation agreement signed before they show the property, and presumably, I guess before they write an offer. Presumably, like maybe they never
Yeah.
show it. Maybe they
I
just write
think
an
that's
offer.
I actually like that. That's actually better. So that way you don't have people just jumping, showing properties without without even knowing the buyer's real or not. So I like that part. You
Yeah.
don't leave.
So we've talked before about how you have had people sign a buyer broker agreement, and I never have. But I guess I'm going to start doing it pretty soon here. But to me, that is like a huge bonus that's coming out of this, is that you'll have to sign a buyer broker agreement, which basically is going to say, I'm going to get paid a certain amount of money. And so I've never signed one of these before, but I imagine when you sign them, you explain to the buyer that, hey, you know what? It's almost for sure that the seller is going to pay the commission. Is that right? You say?
Yeah, yeah, but that's in the past. Now we're not sure if seller's paying or not because we don't know.
Well, we don't know, but the thing is that really nothing is changing because, like, let's just say you're a seller and you have no offers on your property, right? And then some agent comes along and they have and their offer stipulates that their buyer is going to be paid whatever 3%. Let's just say I don't know where that number came from, but let's just say 3%. Okay, so the seller then does what? Then they negotiate the price, right? They say, okay, well, I'm not gonna cut the price by 5%. I'll cut the price by 2%, or I'm gonna counter offer you at 103% of list price. You're basically just gonna negotiate your deal like you did before, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I think we just have to wait and see. What I'm thinking is, since we don't know what the seller's offering, so when writing up the buyer broker agreement, you just have to charge. You cannot leave it blank or open. It has to be certain dollar amount or certain percentage. You have to charge. So if you say 2.5 or 3% in there, the buyer may get scared, right? Because before you were able to leave it open, say whatever the seller pays. You can't do that anymore.
Right. Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that you could just put. All I remember seeing in the buyer broker agreement is a dollar amount or a percentage. Oh, is there
Yeah,
another line? This is blank or whatever the seller agrees to pay.
well, there was a section where you can say whatever the seller's paying, we'll take it.
Right.
So you
Okay.
can't do that anymore. You have to have
Okay.
a set, either a percentage or dollar amount that you're going to charge.
Right.
Buyer need to know upfront.
Well, I wasn't even aware that was an option before. So shows what I know. I always thought, and I was just reading over the buyer broker agreement, like yesterday or whatever. And again, I'm still kind of out of it, but I don't remember seeing that as an option. But maybe it was like a place where you write in or whatever the seller agrees to pay.
That's how I always did it. I just write in there, or whatever the seller's paying per MLS. That's it.
Right.
So,
Well,
so
in the most recent version of the residential purchase agreement, right, there is like a little modifier in there about the commission if you do have a signed buyer broker agreement, right? That's basically it's allowed the commission to be negotiated in the contract, which is something that we didn't have before. This is for California only, and you may not be in California. And I guess
right.
14 states have always had this buyer broker agreement, right? This has been going on for a long time, and like 14 states have required buyer broker agreements.
Yeah, I wish I was in those states, but it was never here required in California.
Right. Well, like I say, I've never done one really, ever. I mean, and I'm going to need to get hip to it. But I think that basically you'll just, the thing is that it was just so common for the seller to pay like a quote unquote reasonable commission to the buyer's agent that it was okay, I guess, to put in that box, like, oh, whatever the seller's paying, right? That'll be fine. Because
Yeah,
it almost never happened that the seller was paying really less. But you're saying, though, that you think that the sellers now, the just because of the mere fact that the commission is no longer published on the MLS, for that reason alone, you're thinking that, but were they even aware the commission was published on the MLS before? I don't know that any seller even realized that.
no, I don't think so. I don't think the sellers knew that, but we knew that. But what I'm saying is, if it's not in the MLS, how do we know what the seller's offering, or is he even willing to offer?
Well, so you can put it anywhere else, right? So you can put it on your own brokerage's website, right? So if you went on to like remax.com or compass.com, it could be published there, right? And it could be published on a flyer of the property. It could be published anywhere else, really, you want to. I would bet is going to happen, like Glide and disclosures.io, right? Where people put their disclosure packages, right? And now they also will let you submit an offer via these platforms, right? I'll bet you that it's going to be put on those platforms, right? This is the buyer's broker compensation on those platforms. So like when you go and you get the disclosure package, there you'll find out. So I imagine that there'll be all kinds of other places that are going to come up because obviously it's going to be a pain in the ass to have to call the agent all the time. Oh, hey, what's the commission, right? I mean, it's actually not a bad idea for a buyer's agent to talk to the listing agent anyway, that's not a bad idea, right?
I mean, without looking at the new listing agreement and all that stuff, we don't know. But what I'm thinking is, I would just ask for 3%.
I would just
Oh,
ask for 3% too. Why not? Right?
let's see what the seller counters, because now seller has option.
Right. Well, especially in the case where this is what really gets me is that in the case, like right now the market's pretty hot, right? Because of the low inventory, and only because of the low inventory, right? That's the only reason why the market feels hot, is because there's nothing for sale, really. There isn't really a lot of volume going on. There's still not a lot of sales happening, but it feels hot because there's nothing for sale. But in a market where like offers are hard to come by, right? A seller's going to be like, oh crap, I've had my property on the market for 2 months, and now I have this offer, and now I'm going to like screw the deal up over 3%, right? Versus what? Waiting another month or two, right? I mean, like if you wait another month or two, what's that going to cost you? Especially if the market is
True.
not going up, right? I mean, like imagine how much. What if the property is vacant? What if you have a second house already, right? I think in most cases, when this happens, sellers are going to be happy to pay a buyer's agent commission because they're like, oh crap, I want to get this property sold. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the buyer's agent's making. It matters what you get as a seller.
No, that's always true. But my fear is the buyers doesn't have the money, right? What if the seller at the end say, no, I'm not paying anything? Now what happens to that deal when you
Well,
submit an offer?
then okay, it could happen that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will or change their loan guidelines so that the buyer can finance the commission. That's one thing that can happen. The buyers could ask for a closing cost credit, right? Which they can then use to pay their commission. Maybe they need a closing cost credit in addition to their commission. That's another thing. But what I think is most likely going to happen right now is that you would just pay more than list price. Like back in the olden days when I was doing a lot of foreclosures, that was very common, right? A buyer would pay 103% of list price for the property and then get 3% in closing cost credits so that the net to the seller was the same or basically the same, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen right now, right? I mean, like you are just going to make your offer, and then you're going to bake that commission has always been baked into the price, but now you're going to bake it in a little more by
Yeah.
offering more than list price. But offering more than list price is by no means uncommon in a hot market, right?
Yeah. Well, then you run into appraisal issues. So,
Well, we don't run into appraisal issues where I'm at. I have a whole thing in my blog. Like in my 20 years, I might have seen 10 low appraisals. Maybe I can't even think of 10. I can probably think of 5 that I've seen. Really, there's hundreds of transactions, right? Like we don't really have low appraisals, although they can happen. But I just don't see
yeah.
it happening a lot. Does it happen a lot where you are?
Not a lot, but I mean, it does happen. So that's what I'm saying. You can run into appraisal issues where the buyer doesn't have money to pay. And then while negotiating, seller could say, no, I'm not paying. Now where do we go?
Well,
Where does that deal go?
then the transaction falls out, and then who's really hurt by that?
Well, I guess both parties,
Who's
mainly
really hurt?
seller,
Who's really hurt by a transaction falling out?
mainly seller.
Mainly the seller is hurt by the transaction falling out. Exactly. The seller is not going to want the transaction to fall out. Who's going to cave in that situation? The seller is probably going to be the one to cave because they really need to sell that house and get on with it. The buyer, they have all kinds of houses they could buy potentially, right? Like this is not the only house they have to buy. That's the only house a seller has to sell, right? So I think the seller's going to cave a lot.
Well, it's going to depend on the market, whether we're in a hot market or cold market. If the seller has 10 offers, then obviously either buyer's paying or someone's not getting paid, right?
Well, the seller might pay anyway, right? It all depends on what's the greatest net to the seller,
Yeah.
That's the case. But I think that in most cases, the seller is going to be offering the buyer compensation as they've always been offering the buyer compensation, because right now the only thing that's changed is $1. That's the only thing that's really changed is that
Yeah.
$1. So if that's the case, and sellers didn't have to pay this whole time, why are they all of a sudden not going to pay anymore? And I think that they will continue to pay. And I think that there are very good reasons for a seller to continue to pay the buyer's agent's commission. And I think that one big reason is what's been true is still true, is that in reality, the buyer's agent is actually doing what the seller wants to have done.
Yeah, but I think here's what I'm thinking. What if there's a 10 offer, and then one offer comes in, agent wants 3%, and another offer comes in, agent wants 2.5%, and another offer, the agent only wants 1%. I'm saying,
Right.
So who's the seller going to sell it to now?
Depends on the offer price.
Right? Offer price
Sure.
and the commission, right? So
Yeah.
I'm saying since it's negotiable now, so it's just like as a buyer's agent, you just don't have no guarantee what you're going to get at the end.
But it's always been negotiable because the buyer's agents have always been able to throw in their commission as a closing cost credit to the buyer, right? Or whatever.
Right. But I mean, but it
That's
was
always
set.
been the case.
It was always set in the MLS. You
Yeah,
knew.
but you could always, but if it came down to it, a buyer could say to the buyer's agent, hey, listen, I need you to reduce your commission so that the seller gets to save 1% or 2% or whatever, right? And that's a little bit of negotiation going on at that point between the buyer and the seller, right? The agent didn't have to do anything. The agent could disagree and then let the deal fall apart, right? That's always been the case, has it not?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean,
Well, it
it's
doesn't
not
really happen
very
very
common, but
often.
yeah,
It doesn't happen very often. It didn't happen very often, but it's always been possible, right?
yeah,
An agent could
yeah,
always choose to like forfeit their commission. And actually,
yeah,
that's so way more common than seeing $1 MLS listings, although I probably have seen like 3 or 4 of them in my 20 years, $1 listings, right? Like every few
yeah,
years, I see one somewhere. But
yeah,
what's much more common is I'll see in the private remarks, uh, buyer's agent waived their commission or waived $10,000 or $20,000, and the effective sale price would have been, plus 10 or 20 grand or whatever. That I see not that often, but much more often than the $1 thing. Do you see that thing in the private remarks where they mention that the buyer's agent waived their commission or part of it?
No, I haven't seen that. Maybe it's just in different markets.
Right.
Uh,
Well, I don't see it a lot, but I've seen it. I don't know. I see that maybe once a year, something like that, versus like once every 4 or 5 years for seeing the $1 listing, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
but there's been many other cases where maybe they don't even mention it, where like the buyer is an agent, right? And then they waive their commission, and then the price gets lowered, right? You see that? That's common, right?
yeah. That's common. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You want the lower price home. Yeah,
lower price for your tax, right? And all that, right? So it's very common. It's basically it's always been negotiable, but was rarely negotiated.
yeah. So that's the only thing we don't know until July, right? What really happens? If
We won't know in July what really happens, but I think that I'm guessing that what's going to happen is basically this, unless some other crazy thing happens, like the Department of Justice intervenes or whatever and throws a fit for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, so I was also listening to on a YouTube an Australian agent talking about it. He was saying that this has always been like that in Australia. Um, what we're going through now. He said the seller's agent does most of the work, and there are hardly no buyer's agents out there.
Yeah, well, actually, I was also reading on Reddit about how people are saying, oh, like in the UK, like the cost to sell a house is so small, it's like 1.5% or 2% because there are no buyer's agents. And some other guy chimes in, he goes, yeah, you know what? Buying a house in the UK sucks. I way I'd way rather buy a house in America because you get representation, right? I mean, see, it used to be that there were no buyer's agents here, right? Buyer's agents really only became a thing like 40 years ago. Before
Right.
that, it was always the listing agent and buyers were not represented. It was a transition for about 10 years from the early 70s to the early 80s when buyers started bringing their own agents. And then there was no system in place. The agent basically would go to the listing agent and say, "Hey, can I get half the commission? And if I bring you an offer." Because that's how it's structured right now in the listing agreement in California. Anyway, there's the commission, and then there's the amount of money out of that commission that the listing agent is authorized to offer to buyers agents, right?
Yeah.
There's a total commission, and then how much out of that the listing agent is authorized to offer to buyer's agents. Because that's how it used to be. It used to be that there was one commission, and it was a certain percent, and then there were no other agents. But then over a 10-year period, when buyer's agents started to become a thing, then they would basically share the commission.
Yeah, I think that was a long time ago, but now we just have to wait and see. But me personally, I'm thinking since the seller has a choice, it's probably going to be less now that they want to offer.
Well, the seller always had a choice, though. That's the thing. The seller always had a choice. The only difference right now is $1 difference.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Well, I think there's going to be some changes. Probably on the buyer agent side, we'll probably see less agents in the market because you can't just start showing properties without any contract or anything. I wonder what happened to the Zillow lead now. They forced you to go show a home without asking any questions.
Right. Well, that's all
How do
going to
you
change.
how do you get into the home now if the listing agent wants to know there's a buyer broker agreement signed or not?
Right. Yeah. Who's your buyer broker? Got to know. Right.
Yeah,
And I'm unrepresented, right? And well, that's why I think that sellers are going to end up actually maybe paying more commission, really, because I think a lot of listing agents are going to say, well, if you're not going to pay a buyer's agent, then you're going to pay me more because I'm going to be
yeah.
doing more work, right? Fair enough, right? And then I'm going to say at crunch time, when they don't get any offers and then an offer comes in and the buyer's agent wants to get paid anyway, what's going to happen? And the seller's going to end up paying it anyway.
I
The
think
listing
that's
agent say, I've been working hard this whole time, and so I'm still going to get my whatever percent you promised me. So now you're going to end up paying more.
that's what I'm thinking. Listing agents probably make more now, and the buyer agent's going to make less. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, what's going to happen, I think, is that like the buyer's representation agreement, you can make it for just one property, right? You can just say for this specific property, right? Like if you represent me in the purchase of this property, I will pay you, right? So there probably will be, I imagine, like automated systems are going to pop up, like an automated DocuSign. Actually, we should just build that, Gary. An automated DocuSign thing, right? Just like, hey, sign here, sign here.
Actually, someone already has that. There was an ad on Facebook I was seeing.
Really? Oh, you should forward
Yeah,
that ad to me, right? That's a great idea, right? I mean, like with
I
every
know.
change, there's new opportunities, really, but
But
yeah,
but me personally, I'm not signing 50 buyer agreement for one buyer. I'm signing one. That's it.
well, so
So
like maybe the buyer just wants to try you out, right? Like, hey, I've never met you before. Like before I commit to you, let's just do it
they
deal
can
for
cancel. They can cancel. But I'm not signing one agreement for one property. That's too much work.
that's it, huh?
Yeah.
So do you insist on like, because like a lot of times, like like I'll meet like, well, I'm going to change my evil ways, but like a lot of times I get referred to somebody. Somebody says, "Oh, hey, Seth, my friend Mark, they recommended that I give you a call. There's a property I want to go see. Can you take me to go see this property?" Right. So like always before I've said yes, I'll go take you to see the property. But now, if it were Gary would say no, even though Mark's my good buddy, I'm not taking you to see the property. You're going to come
But you
here.
can't do that either now.
Well, you can DocuSign it before you go.
That's what I'm saying. But you have
But
to
you're
have
saying you
something
wouldn't do
signed.
that. You wouldn't do that. You're saying, look, we're not going to go see any properties before you come meet with me, and then we're going to talk.
No, they don't have to meet with me. Yeah, we could sign over the DocuSign.
Well,
But
right,
I'm not.
okay, but they have to commit to you to working
Yeah,
with
I'm
you,
not signing for one property.
right?
So they can
Like
go see
you're not going
another
to be a
property
agent
with another agent. I'm not doing that. Yeah.
or adios. Some agents
They
who
want to
work under
work with me or not, work with me
you
or
have
not. That's it.
you're a broker, so you have agents who work under you right now. So what's your
Yeah.
policy at Gary'sRealEstate.com?
Well, I mean, my policy, I mean, you can't really enforce. I mean, but I would recommend that they do the same thing. But if they want to go show a property, they want to sign that one agreement per property. It's up to them. They could do that.
Right. So you don't have a policy. You don't have an office policy. That's your personal policy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to enforce. These are independent contractors. As long as they're following the guidelines, as long as they are getting that sign. I don't think anybody wants to go through that signing an agreement every time you show a property. You should have
No,
it
I don't think
signed up front.
I don't think you'd sign it every time. I think that you might just do one property and then say, okay, well, then we'll sign a new agreement if we're going to go see any more properties, right? You'll get one freebie, right? And then, if we feel like we have a good chemistry or whatever, then we can sign a agreement for 6 months or a year. For me, I would sign a year
I
long
would,
thing, 2 years.
yeah, I mean, year long. I would offer a cancellation. They can cancel whenever they want.
Really, why would you offer them a cancellation?
Well, if they don't like me, they can cancel.
So they can cancel you and then go right the offer to somebody else.
Why? If I showed the property, I'm still going to get paid on that property.
Well, it's very hard, right? If you cancel your agreement, how are you going to get paid? They go sign another agreement with
Well,
somebody else. That person gets
well,
paid.
after yeah, but before I show the property, don't I have to show my buyer broker agreement to a listing agent on that one property that I showed?
I don't know if you have to show it or not. They just say you have to sign it or not. They don't say that you have to show it to the listing agent.
Yeah, but I mean, people hardly ever cancel. You know that.
They hardly ever cancel.
I mean,
Yeah,
if they cancel, they don't like me. They don't like me. I don't want to. I don't want to do anything with them anyway.
right. That's right. Yeah. I wonder how long you
Yeah.
can get a sign for. I wonder if you can get like a two-year agreement signed. Because for me, it's very common to spend years looking for a house, right? I mean, like sometimes we'll find a house in a month or two, right? But a lot of times it's taken way more than a year to find a house.
I would do 1 year. If they haven't bought a home in 1 year, they're probably not going to buy it from me.
Right. Probably not. Yeah, that's a good sign,
Yeah.
right? How long do you think you should wait? Like if it's been 6 months or what do you think? What's a good cutoff time?
Well, I mean, it depends if they're pre-qualified. I mean, if they're ready to go. I mean, I don't see no reason why they shouldn't be making offers.
Right. Well, because there's nothing to buy. That's the issue here. Really, there's nothing to buy. Or they make an offer to 10 other offers, and then only one.
Yeah. Well,
There's
your
10.
market, they're different. Mine, we still have some selection here, so I wouldn't have that issue.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Well, I don't. I don't think that at the end of the day there's going to be that much of a change. I think that it's not going to be too hard to convince a seller to offer a buyer's agent compensation. For the same reason that it's not been too hard this whole time to I don't really have a lot of commission objections really in my experience really. So I'm not charging any more really, so I don't see why there would be all that much objection to paying a buyer's agent because they never had to before. And I think when you explain to sellers that, hey, you never had to before, but why did everybody always do it? Because there's a wisdom in always doing it. There's a lot of reasons why you should pay your buyer's agent.
Yeah,
So
I mean, yeah, the commission objections never really been there. It's just Mike Ferry made it up, I guess. Yeah, I don't know, for role playing. I, you
well,
know, people do want to know what they pay, but I mean, it's never been objection.
well, because at the end of the day, it's always the net. Really, it's always like, what's the
Yeah,
net to you? Really, like that's
exactly.
the
Yeah.
thing. You can make a deal, you can't make a deal. Are you a grown up or are you not a grown up? I mean, like this is business. Just do the math, right? Especially nowadays, like around here, where people have like capital gains tax to pay that's like enormous, right? And going like, well, you're paying like 300 grand in capital gains tax and 70,000 on commission. Like the commission doesn't seem so big anymore.
Yeah, but the $1 million that you're making, you never made that before, so
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's a good income. So, well, it's going to be very exciting days for sure coming up here with all these changes. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the deal that NAR put together. And I hope it sticks.
No, I think it should. I mean, I hope it would, and then I think some good's gonna come out of this. We're probably gonna make us better.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to be better for the industry for sure. And I think that some people will end up making more money, and some people will end up making less money. But that's always the same, no matter what happens. Even if nothing happens, some people make more, some people make less, right?
But I do think there's gonna be some people leaving the business due to these changes.
Well, I hope so. But I hope it's nobody who listens to first thing agents. That's what I'm saying. If you
Oh no, yeah.
listen to us, I think then you're gonna stay a step ahead. All right.
Yep.
Well, I guess that's all we have time for today, Gary.
Okay, Seb, that sounds good, man.
Well, I'm
That's,
glad to be back.
I know. I can see that you're getting excited now again, all over again. So,
That's right. All right, Gary. We'll catch you later.
okay. All right.
All right.